Hello and welcome back to my channel. As promised, here is part 2 of Narcissistic Fathers. Today I am going to focus on the types. I've come up with 8 types that I've given very non-clinical names to. These are not, you wouldn't find these necessarily in a book. These are ones that kind of describe maybe the traits a little bit without putting it into necessary clinical terms. I came up with around 8. Some of them do overlap. However, keep in mind there can be a lot more types, blends of types. So this isn't by any means exhaustive. This is just kind of a good cross section of maybe what to look for in a narcissistic father. So I'm going to jump right in with number 1. Number 1 is the tyrant. Tyrant or the dictator. Exactly what it sounds like. Rules with an iron fist. They are usually a malignant narcissist. They might be grandiose as well. But basically, it's my way or the highway. Don't argue with me. This is the way it is. So they're generally they're usually pretty scary and often not very charming. So definitely not covert. They're definitely more on the overt side. Next, we have the show-off. The show-off is usually grandiose. They could be malignant. There could be a combination. Again, much more overt. The show-off is usually pretty materialistic, sometimes vain about appearance. It might be that, look at me, look what good shape I'm in at my age. Or it could be, look at all the good amazing toys I have, and usually kind of flashy. If they have money, they're going to show it around. If they don't have money, they could go into debt to buy all the things. But it's all about showing off. It's all about showing their toys. They are showing off in some way. It could be when they're younger. It could be through what type of partner they have. Look at my partner. Look how gorgeous they are. Look how amazing they are. Look how rich they are. Look how rich I am. So really, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the show off. Next, we have what's known as the enabler. Now, again, the enabler, I'm not talking about the necessarily an enabler who's not a narcissist. I'm talking about a narcissist who also enables. So they're generally more on the covert side. They look better compared to the other narcissists because they're always in a relationship with another narcissist. So if you've got 2 narcissistic parents, chances are one of them is an enabler who also could be a narcissist. So the narcissist, it's very covert. It's sometimes very hard to spot because they look so good compared to the other parent who's going to be much more overt and could be malignant or more grandiose. So the enabler is kind of allowing them to get away with it, for want of a better word, and they're not there for you and they're not protecting you. You're not getting your needs met. These are all about not getting your needs met. The nice guy. So the nice guy wants to be liked by everyone. He really cares what people think of him. He could be a little grandiose. He could be like overly generous, but there's always strings attached. Like, I'll buy you a house, but now you owe me forever. So there's always strings attached. There's no true generosity. There's still no empathy, but he cares a lot what people think of him. So he's going to come off as a nice guy. The nice guys can be very sneaky because a lot of times people, you're going to get people who don't understand and they're going to say, what are you talking about? Like, your dad is the nicest guy. How could you? You're so lucky to have him as a father. And yet you are not getting your emotional needs met at all. This man still has no empathy. It's all a facade. He's wearing a mask. He's putting in an identity. There's a huge difference between nice and kind. The nice guy is never kind. It's just a veneer. It doesn't mean anything. The actions don't follow up with the words. So it's very incongruent, and there can be a cognitive dissonance that can take place where you somehow have to believe that this is a good father, yet somehow you know deep down that they're not, and you can't quite put your finger on it. Next is the perfect dad. The perfect dad can also fall under the umbrella of the nice guy, even a little bit with the show off, but the perfect dad cares so much about the dad identity. He could have been someone who's always wanted to be a dad, and he wants to show off his kids, but again, showing off his kids, it's only when they're being good or doing what they're supposed to be doing, or maybe they're in jobs he approves of. So the perfect dad is, look at our beautiful house, look at our, wonderful home, look what a wonderful family we are, look at me doing all the things with my kids, but it's all what we call performative. There's no substance behind it, and again, no empathy. You're not getting your emotional needs met. Next is what we call the traditionalist. Traditionalist is misogynistic, They would describe themselves as old school. They can often be very bigoted. They can be very rigid, set in their ways, and they hide behind the truth, like, this is the way we used to do it in the old days. So they're really caught up in that idea somehow of living in the past, but they don't make an excuse for it. They think they're right. They could be the person who really thinks, oh, everyone has, this newfangled ways, and who are all these people that are doing whatever. It should be like, they're very much about the good old days. And chances are, not always, but chances are they're going to be having a lot of privilege. So they're going to be from they're not going to be generally in any sort of marginalized or oppressed group, although sometimes, and that's a whole other topic, if they are, they can identify with the dominant group and want to be like that. Or sometimes there's a cultural component. If there's something in your culture that is extremely traditional, then that can come into play as well. So there could be that component, but again, that's not enough to be a narcissist. Like, someone can be culturally traditional and they still aren't a narcissist. So again, it can be a whole combination of things, but this is still a narcissistic trait, and they hide behind this tradition. But it's abusive, and there's going to be not having your needs met. I think there's a theme here that you might be picking up on. That's never having your needs met in any way when you're with any of these types. The provider. So the provider also comes on the umbrella of the traditionalist, but the provider is very, very into this idea that, look at me, I'm providing. Their whole identity could be about, they have this job and they make this money, and look what I can do for my family. It could kind of go more into the show off. Look at the beautiful things I can buy for everybody. But again, very performative. They get their sense of identity. They get their, it builds them up, this idea of being a provider. Now, again, someone could have this idea that being a provider is very important to them. It doesn't make them a narcissist. So I'm talking about they're a narcissist anyway, and they're abusive, but they're kind of hiding behind this idea of provider. So these are all like different masks that various narcissistic fathers wear. It comes out, so whatever behavior they have, whether it's overt, covert, whether malignant, whether they're grandiose, whether they're a victim, whether they're a vulnerable narcissist, whether dark empath, all these different things, this is more about how they express themselves in their relationship. So that's kind of the distinction. And the last one is the victim. The victim can also be enabler or nice guy. The victim, it's always somebody else's fault. They take no responsibility. They might be extremely emotional. A lot of times this one's tricky because sometimes people think, oh, they're so sensitive, or, they're blaming trauma from their past. They had a terrible childhood. Now, don't get me wrong. This is very sad and terrible that anyone's going to have trauma or a traumatic abusive childhood. However, it still doesn't give them the right to mistreat people. So there are two different things. There's a lot of people that grow up having overcome terrible things in their past, but they don't go on to abuse other people. So they're hiding behind that victim. They're hiding behind this idea that somehow, oh, poor me. It's really about poor me. That's their mantra. Poor me, poor me. Everyone's out to get me. They can be very paranoid sometimes that the world's out to get them. The world's a very dangerous place. Maybe you only have your family to count on, and that can also cause a lot of cognitive dissonance in a child, because I only have my family to count on, and yet I can't count on them. What does that mean? I'm not safe in the world. So again, that creates its whole other issue around different traumas that you can experience. But I just sort of wanted to talk about that, and the idea of, again, it's the mask that they hide behind. So the victim. So those are, there's, like I said, there's more. There's always more. It's a very complex topic, but those are sort of the key ones that stand out the most in what I've come across. And if you have any others that you have come across, or maybe you think your own father doesn't fit quite under any of these, comment. Shoot me a comment, because I always love to hear your comments. I love to interact, and I love to learn from other people. I'm always open to learning more. As much as I know about this topic, there's always more to know and learn. And obviously everyone's experience is unique. So no one's going to fit perfectly into any one area, but I certainly hope you find this helpful as maybe a starting place to examine your own relationship with your father, whether he's still alive, whether he's deceased or estranged, or you're no contact, whatever that looks like in your life. I hope you find this helpful. And stay tuned for part 3, which will be about tools and ways to work with a narcissistic father, whether they are still in your life, whether they're around but not in your life, or whether they're deceased. So again, there's going to be different ways to work with that. And as I've mentioned many times before, it is very important to find a experienced therapist, trauma-informed, who understands the dynamic of narcissism, particularly in families, so you can work through this. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.